Hey there, today we will build a simple weather forecast and air quality workflow using n8n. n8n is an awesome automation tool. I will show you how to make API calls using the HTTP request node. Now we need to go to n8n. If you are using a cloud version of the n8n, you simply open the browser and go to https://app.nan.cloud/login and then log in using your account name. If you are using a self-hosted version of n8n, you can bring up the command prompt window if you're on a Windows machine, or bring up a terminal if you're on a Mac. I'm on a Windows machine. I'm going to launch a command prompt window, and in here I will type in the command n8n and hit enter. It's trying to load the user setting, trying to bring up the n8n instance. Okay, now you see that n8n has started up, and this is the address. You can simply type in this address on the browser or type in O. I'm going to type in O. It will launch n8n, and by default it will fill in your email address and password, and click sign in. You're now on n8n, and the home page is the overview of all your workflow. The second thing you need to do for today's exercise is to create an account on OpenWeather. You will access OpenWeather by going to https://home.openweathermap.org and then click on sign in. If you don't have an account, you can click on create an account, supply a username, your email address, and put in a strong password, and then fill in the form and hit create account. Since I already created an account, I'm going to log in. Once you log in, you will see the new products page, and we will need to generate an API key for our exercise in n8n. Just want to remind you, by default you are signed in as a basic plan. If you go to the building plan page, you are by default signed in as a base plan, and be mindful that you will stay in the free tier if you make under 1,000 calls. So, okay, let's head over to API keys. I already have an API key set up earlier. Make sure you don't share this API key. By the end of the tutorial, I will remove this API key. So to create a new one, you can type in the name of, create a name, for example, a name of a project, n8n weather app, and hit generate. And now you will copy this API key, save it somewhere safe. We will use this in our next steps. So in this exercise, we will build an n8n workflow to retrieve weather forecast information and air quality information using two API calls from openweathermaps.org. Let's head back to the website and look at the API call requirements. We are on the current weather data page. There are many ways to get weather data. We are particularly interested in the one that using city names. Let's scroll down to that section, somewhere in here. Yep, retrieving API, building API requests by city names. So we will be using this API call here. All you need to do is provide the city name. as a query string and also appending your API key. The parameter Q stands for is required, and you will supply the city name. And you can also put in the state code or country code divided by comma if you need to. But if you're using a city in the US, you don't need to provide those informations. And then another required field will be the API key. The next API call we want to look at is the air pollution API. And this is the API call we would like to use. You will provide the latitude and longitude and also the API key. So we will get the latitude and longitude information from our first API call. We will head back to n8n to build an n8n workflow, which consists of the following nodes. We will add a chat trigger node. That's how your workflow will be triggered. And we will add an HTTP request node to call the weather forecast API. That will use the city name entered from the chat trigger node as the parameter. And we will add another HTTP request node to call the air quality HTTP API. And that will use the latitude and longitude from the previous node. And after that, we will create a code node that will set a message based on the air quality code returns from the previous HTTP node to set a message based on the scale of 1 to 5. 1 represents the air quality is the best, 5 represent the air quality is the worst. And then at the end, we will add a edit field node that essentially this will allow us to extract the information from the weather forecast node and combine that with the air quality message we set in the previous code node. And then we will use the information here at the end of the workflow to send an email. Now we are on the n8n overview workflow homepage. Let's click on this create button to create a new workflow. By default, the workflow will give you a default name. Let's rename that to something more meaningful. Let's name it as air quality. Well, let's rename it to weather and air quality workflow and hit save. I'm going to click this plus button to add a chat trigger. Basically, I want the user to type in the city name. Let's test this out so that I can see the output response. Click this back to canvas button and click on this chat button on the bottom. I'm going to type in New York and hit this arrow key. All right, you're going to see a problem because there's nothing after this node, but the whole point is to see the JSON response when I type in the chat message. Let's mouse over this trigger node, and I want to click on these 3 little dots here and click open. Now I can see the JSON object, the output. This has a session ID, the action, and the chat input. What I'm interested in is the chat input. So I'm going to pin this result so I can use this data to test the next node. All right, I'm going to click back to canvas and close and hide the chat. Let's move this node to the left so I have more space to work with. I'm going to click on this plus button to add my first HTTP request. It's a GET API call, and I'm going to copy the API URL. From here, which I already preset the URL with my API key, I'm going to paste it here. I need to change the parameter. Right now, let me switch to expression. Right now, it's hard-coded to London. I want to use the city name, which I inputted from the chat, as a parameter, as a dynamic parameter. So I'm going to delete this and then drag over this chat input and place it right after the q equals 2. And this automatically insert me the variable. It says here $JSON.chat input. If you mouse over this, it should give you a definition what this $JSON represents. Basically, it returns the JSON input data to the current node for the current item. Shorthand for $input.item.json. All right. And you can see the result. It dynamically replaced the variable with the actual value from the chat message. Let's test this HTTP request. And it's successful. This is the output from the API call. Right now for New York, the current weather is clear sky. Okay, I'm satisfied with this. Let's click on back to canvas. I'm going to add another HTTP request by clicking on the add button here, and I will search for HTTP requests. I'm going to add the second API call. Same thing, this URL already pre-filled it in with my API key. I'm going to paste it here, switch to expression. I will delete these hard-coded latitude and longitude value and replace that with the latitude and longitude I got from the previous node. So I'm going to drag the latitude over. Same thing for longitude. I'm going to place the cursor after the long equal sign and then drag over this variable for longitude. And now let's test this step. Now we get the air quality score here. For New York, the air quality score is number 2. So the next step, I'm happy with this. I'm going to click back to canvas. I'm going to add another node, which is the code node, so I can use the air quality code score and then based on that to return me a message. Before we move any further, we want to rename these HTTP nodes. So I'm going to click on rename, name this to weather, HTTP request, and then this one I will rename it to air quality HTTP request. Okay, my next step will be adding a code node. Search for code, select the code node, and here we want to get data from the previous nodes. Let me click on execute previous nodes. And let me click on open again. Let's start chat one more time. Unpin and send. All right, now I have some data coming from both HTTP requests. Let me hit open again. All right, now I have some input from the previous node, which is the air quality HTTP request. I'm going to copy a predefined JavaScript that I have written earlier. Essentially, I'm taking the JSON response from the previous node and getting the first item under the node's main, and then the variable AQP. That's where I grab the score. And then I'm setting a switch statement to this variable air quality index. If the air quality index is 1, I'm setting a string called asthma risk, and then setting it says great, air quality is excellent. If the air quality index is 2, I'm setting it to a different string says good, air quality is good, but sensitive groups have to be aware, so on and so forth. And at the end, I'm returning this string variable called asthma risk as the result. So I'm going to copy this, head back to n8n and paste it under and override this JavaScript and paste it here. And let me test this step. Here you go. This is the output. Based on the air quality index here, number 2, I'm getting this result, which is expected. Okay, so I'm going to head back to the canvas. Next step, I'm going to add another node, which is the edit field nodes. I would like to combine the weather forecast result and the air quality message I set in this code node, and both be available at the set field node. Let me click on this edit button, search for edit fields, and I'm going to create 2 fields. Click on this add field button. The name of the field I want to create is weather, and I would like the value to be from the weather. So this is the good thing about giving a meaningful name for the HTTP request. Instead of just HTTP request 1, HTTP request 2, now I can expand this weather HTTP request and then drag over the description, clear sky, as the value. And as you can see, it automatically generated the variable for me and then show me the result. Okay, I'm going to add another field. And I will close this. I would like to get it from the code, the previous node, the code nodes, and I want to use this asthma. I can name it the same, asthma risk. And then I'm going to drag over the value, and now I can see it pre-populated as the variable name and also the result. Okay, let's test this steps. And the output, I have 2 new parameter or 2 new field. One is called weather. It gave me the description of the weather, and one is this string that I set it called asthma risk. It shows the air quality. Okay, I'm happy with this, and then I'm gonna click on back to canvas. So we have Everything we needed, we make 2 API call, and then at the end we set 2 fields. The next step, or in the next tutorial, we will send an email to our inbox and draft and include the information from the add field in our email message.